Welcome to From X to Z, the show that believes you never age out of learning about the world around you. Featuring social media maven Danielle, Farage, and Mervyn Dinnen, the analyst who puts the X in expert. They're here to talk all things jobs, HR, and trends. So mind the generational gap. This is From X to Z, only on the Purple Acorn Network.
Hello, and welcome back to From X to Z. My name is Danielle Farage. I'm very happy to be joined by Mervyn Dinnen. Welcome, Mervyn. How you doing today?
I'm doing very good, Danielle. I'm very happy. It's kind of a nice coming into summer now, and I love London in the summertime. For
Me
those
too.
who are new to the show, I'm based in the UK. You might have heard that in my accent.
Yes, and I'm based in New York City. Fun fact, my trip right before I went to college, so between my high school and freshman year of school, I went to London with my cousin, and it was the most fun trip. We went for like 2 weeks. I have an aunt in London, and we got to visit her and some other family. It was lovely. That was my only time experiencing London in the summer.
Ah, that was good. I wish I'd have known you then. I could have
Yes.
shown you around or something.
Could have given me a couch to sleep on. Another one.
Yeah, possibly. But one thing I must ask you about London. Were
Yeah.
lots of people asking you if you were related to a politician?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. How did you know?
Well, it's the surname, it's kind of.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But actually my real last name is spelled Faraj. Because it's Iraqi, so it's supposed to be pronounced Faraj.
Ah,
Yeah. But when my mom married my dad, she was like, people don't know how to say that. Like they say Farage or Farage or like, I don't know, some other pronunciations. She's like, okay, we're going to change it to GE, like garage with an F.
yes.
Makes so much sense.
Yep.
And people have been, pronouncing my name right ever since. Actually, more so in the last 10 years.
That's interesting because obviously garage is very much the American, where in the UK we call it a garage. So strictly speaking, if you're British, you'll be Danielle Farage.
Doesn't sound too good.
It's quite the same. No, I know that. I prefer the Farage. Well, this Farage, not the other Farage.
Right.
But we don't get into politics on this show anyway.
No, we don't. Again, it's almost a negative thing. Like even if your last name was, or your name was like Taylor Swift, like it would probably be annoying, even though she's a very well-liked person. Like no matter if they're liked or not, if they're a really big name, it's just kind of annoying because it's what everyone's gonna bring up.
Yeah.
It's like when I see tall people, like I try not to say, "Oh my God, you're so tall." Like I'm not talking about 6'2". I'm talking about like, "Oh, you don't go by the metric system, or you go by the metric system." Anyway,
No. I understand feet and inches.
yeah. If someone's like 6'7", I try not to say, "Wow, you're so tall."
Well,
Sometimes
of
it just
course,
comes out.
when we first met, the first thing you commented on was I was so tall.
Right, but that's different.
I'm 6'4", by the way,
Because we see each other like on camera, so I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, you're like taller in real life than I thought you were."
Taller than my avatar. That's when in the early days of Twitter and social media, whenever we had our very first tweet ups, that's all everybody said.
Right.
I was so
love
tall.
it.
They didn't know it from my avatar, how tall I was.
Keep calling me out, Mervyn. I like it.
No.
So
I wouldn't dare. The
you
optics
just
aren't
did.
good.
No, it's fine. I love it. I am so excited about our topic today.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know and who might not follow me, A, you should because I'm a hoot. And B, I have been talking about this topic for probably the last 2 months since before that, because I was interviewed on TV about it last year, where we were talking about high school students being hired by large companies like Google right out of high school and kind of just skipping college or having the company pay for their college degree or whatnot. And in that same conversation, I had brought up that people are going from high school to skilled trades as well. And we saw a little bit of an increase last year in the trades. This year, given all of the instability in basically every part of our lives, I have noticed an uptick and really seen opportunity, gotten an inside look into the industrial industry and into what we call industry in the industry. And I've gotten a chance to go under the hood. And I have to say, the amount of opportunity that is within manufacturing, trades, industrial, oil and gas, like these really unsexy industries, is unmatched. Unmatched to anything we're seeing in any other industry. And, 10 years ago, it was like the hottest thing to go into tech finance consulting. You will see this if you watch my content, and, some of that content I created in the past month is going to be dropping soon. But I'm really focused more on the trades right now, and on spreading that awareness and that message. There's a number of things that we're going to talk about within that and what is driving that on a political scale, but also economic scale. But straight out the gate, let's bring up the headline of the day. So, Gen Z workers are opting out of college, which we kind of already knew, although college enrollment is at an all-time high, compared to 10 years ago. There are about 2 million fewer students, apparently, in the system than there were last year. And and I mean, this makes a lot of sense. But straight out the gate, Mervyn, are you hearing about the trades more and more? Is it something that's coming across your radar, or is it just me?
I think it is. I think that there's we're almost reaching, I suppose, almost like a shifting point where a lot of conversations around the world of work are, people looking at maybe ways to get into organizations, and particularly with the advent of new technologies and stuff, it's people not really understanding how they can kind of maybe learn a new kind of skill, or learn from a new organization. And the one of the things that, I suppose the parental generations have always said is, go and learn, get yourself a trade. That's the way it used to be years ago. And you'll always be working. You'll always earn money. You'll always, because everybody needs a tradesman. And that could be anything from people working on construction sites to the fact that I'm sure it's the same in New York, but you can't find somebody to lay a carpet to, well, I suppose say clean windows. I mean, you can do that yourself, but I mean, you're always looking for people to do things. Whereas, if I think about it, I've always been, I started financial services and all of that. I've always been services. I've never really, I'll be honest, my ripe old age, I don't know how to put up a shelf or anything like that. But I have friends who left school, didn't go to college, didn't qualify professionally, but learned trade skills, and they can come and knock up some shelves from me in moments. So it's kind of you kind of almost see a shelving behind me in the corner, and so I didn't put it there. And so I think that there's always been a belief that if you've got a trade, then you'll always be able to work. You'll always have, people will need you, and it's something you can always do. There goes a landline phone ringing in the background.
Wow.
Every other episode, there's a
Blast from
landline
the
phone.
past.
And it's only going to be my mother or my mother-in-law. I say that every time. And when I go inside, the wife will say, yeah, it was my mother, sorry. But anyway, I can see the logic, and I can see why a career advice to Gen Z, and particularly those maybe younger Gen Z and top end Alpha Gen would be told, look, get a trade, learn something that will stay with you for life, and you can go off and then spend time on your laptop creating things and algorithms, but learn how to do basic stuff first.
That is so fascinating that the whole go into the trades and learn a skill was something that was normalized when you were in school. Because when I think about what was normalized in my school, it was go get a job in tech, finance, or consulting. And usually they're talking about the larger companies, they're not talking about startups. Although I went the startup route because I knew that I could learn a lot of things and have a really hands-on experience with a lot of different skills and tasks if I went to a smaller company. And so that was the path that I chose, but that was not the normal path by any means. The normal path was go work for 2 to 3 years at a bank or a consulting firm or a tech company, or go to a tech company after that. And I think what's so jarring to me about this whole thing is like, we've sold this idea of a finance, cushy finance job where you're like super happy. And most people who go and do that path are either A, really unhappy and still doing it, or B, looking for a way out, or C, they get really, really, really lucky and they have great managers and they somehow find, happiness. And I know several people like that. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it is of the fewer. And if they aren't happy, they might be also hopping around and trying to find the right culture for them, the right, leader. But largely, I think that this generation who did follow that path is now 26, 27, especially if you're in that category, you're like, what do I do now? Every day, someone's reaching out to me, asking me, about my path and about what the decisions that I've made and how do I transition into content creation or transition into just a job where I'm happy and I'm fulfilled every day. And it really, it's sad to me, partially. And it's also like, well, I kind of saw that coming from a mile away, 5 years ago when I chose to, go into this HR tech industry. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about, the normalization and how that's changed. I know trades are they were a little bit stigmatized for a long time, still are generally within immigrant households at least. Is that the case in the UK? Like, I know that you guys have a better apprenticeship program and all of that. It's more normal.
Well, we did. I don't know how strong the apprenticeship programs are now. I think that again, as each generation comes through, we've probably, like yourselves, possibly to a greater extent, because I think the US, and here I'm going to come across as kind of maybe a bit ignorant, but I've always felt that there was a strong blue collar kind of part to your workforce, whereas in the UK people leave school and whereas 20, 30 years ago, they'd go into a building site to start learning basic skills like that, or into engineering. There seems to have been a shift away from that. As I said earlier, I think, you can't find somebody to do the basic skills for you kind of thing, because nobody's wanted to do that. And because the perception has been, and some of it, without getting political, some of it has been through immigration. So, a lot of people who've come to the UK over the last 30, 40 years have had a more of a trades background. So you've probably, any time you've spent in the UK, you've probably heard people talk about Polish builders and things like that, because a lot of that knowledge came in from immigration, which I suppose to a certain extent it has done for the US as well, but you're a larger country, clearly. So there has been some of that, but that's also given a kind of a momentum to those kind of trades and skills that people then want to do. So there is a bit of a move back to what we would call the old trade skills, I suppose, the old skills from doing trades, that people will still do. Whereas it possibly those who have left school and gone through the college route and gone on to university or college, and then looked at something in professional services or something like that. Of course, those are the kind of people who will find things to be ultimately a lot more restricted. Digitization, Lord knows what AI is going to do to some of those anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that, that I can understand the reason why now people would advise, particularly younger Gen Z and particularly the generation after that, to look at those core kind of skills, the things like building, construction, and those kind of,
Yeah.
making things, putting things together, creating things, that kind of thing, as opposed to the I suppose more kind of, sitting at a laptop kind of,
Yeah.
designing things.
Because anyone can open a laptop and learn how to do anything. So go learn something that you can't learn online, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's similar to how to grow a really successful podcast or email list. It's like the experts will tell you do something that is really hard to replicate or that a lot of people aren't willing to go do. I want to call out something here, which in this article, which is that in the first quarter of 2024, Gen Z made up 18% of the workforce, but this same group, 18 to 25-year-olds, made up nearly 25% of all new hires in skilled trades last year. So it's clear that they're, gaining in traction.
Yeah.
And there's this one story in here that is really interesting to me. So Chase Gallagher, he's 24, began landscaping when he was 12 or 13, much like a lot of people, when they're younger. By 18, so 6 years in, he had as many as 82 clients. His business brought in over $1 million in sales last year. He earned just under $500,000 through his salary and his owner share of the business. The average starting salary for skilled trades is about $23 per hour, which, in my opinion, I think is higher than the national average and definitely the minimum wage. And electricians make a median salary of $62,000 per year. Plumbers make roughly the same, a little bit more, and construction workers make less, $46,000. But also, there's a lot less cost, right? There's a lot less of that barrier to entry to getting into a trade.
Yeah.
You're not paying the $80,000 a year on tuition. But yeah, the other thing that's driving this outside of just the opportunity is that Trump, in the end of April, I believe, put out an executive order to get more people into the trades. And having been to LinkedIn the other week, they put out their jobs report, 3 fastest growing industries: manufacturing, oil and gas, and construction. And I think where the challenge actually is, and where there's a gap and there's a lot of opportunity for what I do, is in selling the appeal of working in these industries. Because on the large part, they are male dominated and they skew older. And so how can you start to tell the stories of these young people within the trades who have realized the potential that they offer and actually gone and pursued, much like, some of the stories in this article? I find it fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. And you're in a much stronger position to do that. Whereas, if I said that's what I'm going to do, they'd say, well, what what did you start doing? What skills did you start learning? I said, well, when I left college, it wasn't really like that.
Yeah.
No. So I think you are in a stronger position to do that. But I think that some of this is cyclical as well. I think you'll probably find, if I go back and look back through the kind of stuff we read now 20 years ago that have been a similar thing, you often find this when there's a change of government. There's a kind of, one of the ways to really energize voters is to say, we want to get back to the core skills of the country, make sure our young people learn those basic skills and can contribute in the future to like house building and things like that. So that's always politically very good.
Mm.
But I think at the moment, to be perfectly honest, and it probably comes through in a lot of the conversations we have in this podcast series, um, there's almost a state of flux going on in organizations. And, you know, we talk about these things, but when I go out to conferences, as do you, this kind of, you know, mismatch between expectations of a probably, you know, a Gen X boomer leadership and, you know, a Gen Z alpha gen kind of entry level, a huge mismatch in terms of expectations, in terms of what they expect, in terms of what they do and how they want to progress. Whereas I think that what makes sense to me is a return to those kind of core trades. Is you don't have that. It's not like you're going to have people kind of saying, you know, this is different, or, you know, yeah, there is one way to do things properly and one way to do things well. And I think that's what will, you know, I think that's why in some respects this makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Yeah, I to your point, I think there is, you know, a certain way to do things, and there's also opportunity for, you know, people who are younger to learn from older generations in a way that like maybe we've forgotten. And also a way for organizations at the helm to innovate and to have, you know, this new blood entering the workforce. It's like there's I can think of a million and one really sexy ideas for content around the trades. And that might sound really funny because it's largely a very unsexy space. But in my opinion, like I think this these industries are really ripe for disruption. They are disrupting internally. It's not like they're sleeping on AI. I went to an industrial intelligence conference, which what the heck is that? That is essentially they were showcasing the technology that powers manufacturing. And their technology touches 90% of manufacturing in the US, which is a crazy scale. And it's only growing, right? Because we are manufacturing more in the US due to the current administration and before. And so it's to me, I'm just excited to see what happens in this space. I would say if you have not thought about pivoting into a growing industry like manufacturing, oil and gas, or the trades and skilled trades, I would say start thinking about it. And there is this sort of also, you know, I grew up in Manhattan. I'm not going to claim that, you know, I'm super close to a construction worker. Like, I don't know anyone who is in the trades. And I know that that's where my dad came from. He came to this country from Israel when he was 21 with like hundreds of dollars in his pocket and started in the trades. He then went and created his own construction company. And I know that that was a very solid foundation for the American dream. So I'm not saying that that is like totally, you know, accessible or it's easy or it's a guaranteed path, but I would say similarly to what you were saying, when you return to the basics, it's like people are always going to need plumbing and help with, you know, painting. And of course, robots might come into the picture. I've definitely seen them enter, you know, they're all over my algorithm. But it's going to take time. So at least you'll have some sort of job security in the meantime. And maybe you can own a robot army of tile placers, and then you can just be a millionaire. Like I just feel like there's so much opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, it's interesting because I'm moving home shortly. And so we've had a number of kind of, I suppose, electrician, carpenter, those kind of people. And one of the things, I didn't even know we were discussing this today, but one of the things I noticed was they all seem quite young. And whereas, you know, years and years ago, there would have all been people in their 40s, 50s, you know, who've been doing this for years. But some of the people that have come around to quote for us and to kind of talk to us about how we can do things have been in their late 20s, you know, mid to late 20s or early 30s. So there is, I believe, there is certainly in the UK and from what you've said in the US, a drive towards the core trade skills,
Mhm.
and which again, in some respects, don't change. Whereas, if we're talking about the digital skills, in 6 months' time they'll be out of date.
Yeah.
Whereas, plumbing, that kind of thing, electricity, that won't be out of date in
Yeah.
6 months' time.
And there's so much, like, yeah, I'm just very bullish. Like, there's so much opportunity from an owning your time standpoint too. Like, when you have your own detailing business, you can make your own hours. You can decide which types of clients you service, right? It's like it's having that control of owning your own business, but it's also something that like is likely not going to go away anytime soon. And in my opinion, the reason why we're seeing more young people shift to that is also out of necessity, right? It's like there's no viable path. Like I can't go to corporate because I don't have a degree. Maybe it's that, or I don't know how my degree could serve me. I've kind of explored, enough of the tech world to know I don't want to be in it, or consulting or whatever, desk job. And you maybe are like, oh, I maybe want to work with my hands, or I want to work with people, but I want to be picky about it, or I want to own my own business and own my time. And I think that's something real that these types of, these types of trades can offer people, which is really cool.
Definitely, definitely, definitely.
And it's a proven path. Hey, I cannot shut up about the trades. If you stop me in the street like these days, I'm like, I can't stop talking about it. And the other thing is, it's interesting. Like anyone I talk to, most of the time, they will know someone or have some sort of relationship to the trades. It's very interesting because, again, like you were saying, it is the foundation. And oftentimes we forget that. But no ego, amigo. If you are thinking about going into the trades, let me know. I'm very interested in talking to you. And I'm also working on a little bit of a media project that is about the trades. So, yeah, looking to talk to 20-something-year-olds who are going into the space or are actively working in the trades. So that's a little plug for myself.
And this isn't sponsored by anybody.
No, it's not. If
That
you'd like
wasn't a
to
sponsored
sponsor.
plug. Yeah, if you would like to
Yeah.
sponsor and would like to share maybe research around generations in your workplace, we're always happy. We're always happy to talk.
Yeah, we're definitely interested. I mean, we give free press to a lot of people, anyone who's writing
Yeah.
something interesting about generational topics. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Mervyn, to you for being a gracious host while I rant about the trades and how interesting they are. And we will see you back next week with another episode of From X to Z. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.